Hello friends, welcome to the Point. Let's continue our discussion on India-United States relations. So in this session we'll be discussing about the military relations between India and US. So the US has 4 foundational agreements so that it signs with its defense partners. The Pentagon, it describes the agreements as a routine instruments that the US uses to promote military cooperation with partner nation. American officials, they have stated that the agreements, they are not prerequisites for bilateral defense cooperation, but would make it simpler and more cost effective to carry out activities such as refueling aircraft or ships in each other's countries and providing disaster relief. The first of the 4 agreements is that the General Security of Military Information Agreement. It was signed by India and the US in the year 2002. So this agreement, it enables the sharing of military intelligence between the two countries, and it requires each country to protect the other's classified information. And the second agreement is that Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, and it was signed by 2 countries on 29th August 2016. So this Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, it permits the military of either country to use the other's bases for resupplying of carrying out repairs. So the agreement, it does not make the provisions of logistical support binding on either country and requires individual clearance for each request. So the third agreement is that communications compatibility communication compatibility and security agreement, which is called as COMCESA. It was signed during the inaugural 2+2 dialogue in the year September 2018. So it is an India specific variant of communication and information security memorandum of agreement. So that enables these 2 countries to share secure communications and exchange informations and approved equipment during bilateral and multilateral training exercise and operations. The fourth agreement, that is the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, it was signed in the year 2020, and it permits the exchange of unclassified and controlled unclassified geospatial products, topographical, nautical and aeronautical data and products and services between India and the US National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. A professor called Harshvi Pant. He is a professional of international relations at King's College in London. So he highlighted the importance of India to US strategic planning by saying India is key to the US ability to create a stable balance of power in the larger Indo-Pacific and at a time of resource constraints, and it needs partners like India to shore up its sagging credibility in the region in face of Chinese onslaught. And Robert Box, professor of South Asia Studies at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies, and he opines that the US overestimates both India's desire to improve the relationship and the benefits so it would bring. So as a part of America's policies to counter China, one of the Trump administration policies are to make India as one of the major defense partners, for which it is in talks with Indian representative to sell highly technologically advanced Predator drones. So India has floated a tender to buy 100 multi-role fighter aircraft in the Indian MRCA competition, also called Mother of All Defense Deals, which is worth around $15 billion under Narendra Modi's Make in India initiative. Although the deal is yet to be finalized, at present, the Trump's administration is now pushing for sale advanced F-16 jet fighters or FA-18 Super Hornet. So in a meeting with George Bush and the Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So in November 2001. So these two leaders, they expressed a strong interest in transforming the US-India bilateral relationship, and the high-level meetings. And concrete cooperation between the two countries, it increased during 2002 and 2003. And in January 2004, the US and India, it launched next steps in strategic partnership, which is called as NSSP, next step in strategic partnership, which was both a milestone in the transformation of the bilateral relationship and a blueprint for its further progress. So in July 2005, Bush hosted Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in Washington DC. So these two leaders, they announced the successful completion of next steps in strategic partnership as well as other agreements which further enhanced cooperation in the areas of civil, nuclear, civil space and high technology commerce. Other initiatives announced, it included a US-India economic dialogue that fights against HIV or AIDS, and disaster relief, technology cooperation, agricultural knowledge, a trade policy forum, energy dialogue, a CEO forum, and an initiative to assist each other in furthering democracy and freedom. So President Bush, he made a reciprocal visit to India in March 2006, during which the progress of these initiatives were reviewed and the new initiatives were launched. And in June 2015, so the US Defense Secretary called Ashton Carter, he visited India and he became the first American Defense Secretary to visit an Indian military command in December of the same year. And Manohar Parrikar became the first Indian Defense Minister to visit the US Pacific Command. So, and in the year March 2016, India rejected a proposal by the US to join naval patrols in the South China Sea, alongside Japan and Australia. And the Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar said, India has never taken part in any joint patrol and we only do joint exercise. The question of joint patrol does not arise. So in January 2017, Peter Lavoie, he is a senior director for South Asian Affairs at the US National Security Council. He declared that the partnership between India and the US under the Barack Obama administration, it has been incredibly successful. And Lavoie stated, I can tell you quite definitively that due to our partnership, several terrorism plots were foiled and Indian lives and American lives were saved because of this partnership. And on October 27, 2020, the United States and India, they signed a basic exchange cooperation agreement which enables greater information sharing and further defense cooperation to counter China's growing military power in the region. Nuclear cooperation between India and US. So in late September 2001, President Bush lifted sanctions imposed under the terms of the 1994 Nuclear Proliferation and Prevention Act following India's nuclear test in May 1998. A succession of non-proliferation dialogues, it bridged many of the gaps in understanding between the countries. And in December 2006, the US Congress passed the historic India-United States Civilian Nuclear Agreement, which allows direct civilian nuclear commerce with India for the first time in 30 years. And US policy, it had been opposed to nuclear cooperation with India in prior years because India had developed nuclear weapons against international conventions, and it had never signed a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. So India has never signed a nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and the legislation clears the way for India to buy US nuclear reactors and fuel for civilian use. The India-United States Civil Nuclear Agreement, also referred to as 123 Agreement, which was signed on 10th October 2008, is a bilateral agreement for peaceful nuclear cooperations which governs civil nuclear trade between American and the Indian firms to participate in each other's civil nuclear energy sector. So for this agreement to be operational, nuclear vendors and operators must comply with India's 2010 Nuclear Liability Act, which stipulates that nuclear suppliers, contractors and operators must bear financial responsibility in case of an accident. So prominent industrial accidents is that first one is 1984 Bhopal chemical gas disaster, and in the year 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, which have led a greater scrutiny by civil society into corporate responsibility and financial liability obligations of vendors and operators of critical infrastructure. And in the year 2010, the Indian Parliament voted to pass the Civil Liability of Nuclear Damage Act to address concerns and provide civil liability for nuclear damage and prompt compensation to the victims of a nuclear incident. And on March 2019, India and US, it signed an agreement to strengthen the bilateral security and civil nuclear cooperation, including the construction of 6 American nuclear reactors in India. Pokhran test reactions. In 1998, India tested nuclear weapons, which resulted in several US, Japanese and European sanctions on India. And India's then Defense Minister, George Fernandez, said that India's nuclear program was necessary as it provided a deterrence to some potential nuclear threat, and most of the sanctions it imposed on India were removed by 2001. And India has categorically stated that it will never use weapons first but will defend if attacked. So the economic sanctions it imposed by the United States in response to India's nuclear test in May 1998, it appeared at least initially to seriously damage India-US relations, and President Bill Clinton, he imposed wide-ranging sanctions pursuant to 1994 Nuclear Proliferation Prevention Act and US sanctions on Indian entities involved in the nuclear industry and opposition to international financial institution loans for non-humanitarian assistance project in India. And the United States, it encouraged India to sign the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, that is CTBT, immediately and without conditions. The United States also called for restraint in missiles and nuclear testing and deployment by both India and Pakistan. The non-proliferation dialogue initiated after the 1998 nuclear test and has bridged many of the gaps in understanding between the countries. So this is about the military relations between India and US. See you all in the next session with some other interesting topic. Thank you.